I mean, not that I want to be dizzyingly eclectic in the kitchen, but I think it is impossible to cook, if you like eating, without borrowing a bit from here, a bit from there. And these flatbread pizzas are a vaguely Eastern Mediterranean take on, you've guessed it, an Italian idea. And the base is a bought flatbread. I mean, these are styled Mediterranean wraps, but obviously I'm not going to use them as wraps. And this is a tomato, mint and halloumi pizza. I'm just going to get the seeds out of the tomato because I don't want it too wet and pulpy on that thin base. Oh, these are lovely and fresh. Just chop fairly finely. And just smooth these now pulpy tomatoes over the flatbread. And on top of the tomatoes, something I love so much, some halloumi, which is intensely salty Cypriot hard sheep's cheese. Again, chop this very finely, or you can crumble it with your fingers. This won't melt and go into that sort of stringy goo that mozzarella does, but it does sort of meld into the tomatoes and soften. And the saltiness of the cheese against the sweetness of the tomatoes is wonderful. So just sprinkle the halloumi on top. Bit of dried mint. Now, an Egyptian friend of mine introduced me to the joys of dried mint. Just has a depth and sweetness that is lovely, and when this is cooked, I want just to blanket it with some freshly chopped mint, and it's as if the freshness of that mint really complements this dried muskiness underneath. Aha, bit of olio, not too much. Just drop it on the barbecue. It won't take very long. You just want that thin base to crispen a little bit more and the cheese just soften a little in the heat. As you can imagine, these flatbread pizzas lend themselves to pretty well any kind of elaboration or topping you want. And this is a chili and coriander pizza with some ground coriander, lovely, sort of intensely, deeply grassy. And pour in a bit of oil, and just as the mint, halloumi and tomato pizza is sort of partnered by some fresh mint at the end, so this has to have a really lovely leafy covering of fresh coriander once it comes off the barbecue. It works so well pairing the sort of scorched, nutty spiciness of the ground dried herb with the final smattering of the fresh. These aren't thick, wodgy pizzas. I mean, there's something a bit poppadom-like almost about their base. Okay, so on with this. And finally, something I really love, such an easy thing to do, a za'atar flatbread. Now, za'atar is a bought Middle Eastern spice blend. It's a mixture of wild thyme, sesame seeds and ground sumac. All I'm going to do, so you can see how easy it is mix that with a bit of oil, a bit of brushwork I'm in the mood for. Let's brush this on. And this can join the other two on the barbecue now. There you go. And it's really just a question of cooking until that thin base is even crisper and everything is beginning to ooze in and melt slightly, and the best eaten, I think, just cut into spindly wedges with, I don't know, a drink before dinner or lunch. I'm going to put this on just for a minute just to speed up the process because I'm too impatient, and start chopping my herbs to go over the pizzas when they come off the barbecue. just something about the marriage of sharp cheese and fresh mint that really works. And here they're the baseline for my courgette fritters. And I know the word fritters really conjures up this complex world of deep frying and dense eating, but these are really light vegetable patties that are crispy and juicy at the same time. I mean, perfect. There are just 4 courgettes providing this amount of grated matter. I want to get as much liquid out of these courgettes as possible, which is why I'm strewing them over this jauntily nautical tea towel. Swaddle these little babies and bung them out of the way while I get some other ingredients out of the fridge. Eggs, spring onions, feta, my salty sharp cheese of choice here. Okay, so finely chop the spring onions, bunch of them, 4 or 5, that sort of thing. Put them in here. And these are wonderfully herby little patties, and my herbs of choice today: mint and parsley. Oh, again finely chopped. Lovely summer garden here. You know, the funny thing is, people are so kind of foolishly and smugly snobbish about dried herbs, but dried herbs can be wonderful, and interestingly they provide something very different from their fresh counterpart. For example, fresh mint, I think, brings coolness, whereas dried mint brings warmth, and I want that here. So a sprinkle of dried mint to compound the heavenliness of the fresh mint. Want some paprika, not just because I love its sweet heat, but also because I want the reddish gold tinge it brings to these lovely green and white crispy cakes. Oh, look at that. About 140 grams, 150, anyway, a cupful of plain flour, 3 eggs, wonderful hit of sunshine here. So into this golden batter, dense, salty, crumbly feta. And finally, these beautiful dark tipped jade strands of courgette. Everything's juicily combined with these lovely strands hanging out. Just need to put the pan on the heat, some olive oil in it, and dollop them in and fry them. Emergency breakfast supplies. I tend to make pancakes in a weekend anyway, but if I'm away, I like special ones. Ricotta hot cakes, which are wonderful, really light and fresh, just taste of a summer weekend. I always think of them a bit as having the flavour, sort of cheesecake and the texture of a souffled griddle cake. Anyway, a 250 gram tub of ricotta is what you need to start off. And 125 millilitres of milk. I always use semi-skimmed. It's easy to measure just by half filling the ricotta tub. And 2 eggs, which need to be separated, and the eggs beaten separately. But a small child can do this for you, so that's okay. These stir together very easily. Don't need to be too energetic, so it's quite good for early in the morning. And now, 100 grams of plain flour, about a teaspoon of baking powder, and a little child labour ensues. When I'm cooking away from home, I do try and go with the flow, but there are some things I always have to have with me. My Magi whisk. I'm afraid to say I always carry this in my bag because you never know when you might need it. Don't always carry this, but I knew I was going to do a bit of egg white work. Bruno, I want you to whisk this quite strongly, not so much that it goes all over the table, but to make it frothy. Please? Yes. And Mimi, just get the lumps out of this and gently get the flour in. I love strawberries with these. There's something about that juicy redness. But I have to say, I'm not going to put up a fight. I know that the children are going to want syrup, and I do occasionally as well. The thing about the fruit, and it could be any fruit, is that it seems to highlight the freshness of the taste and actually makes you feel like you're eating very healthily.
Mummy!
Yeah?
Is this enough?
Let's see. I think that's fine. Do you want a bit more? Yeah, they're very good. I think that's okay now. I only want them a bit frothy. Can I have this, please? Thanks.
But I don't like strawberries.
Well, you don't have to have the strawberries. You can have the syrup. Thank you. So, just pour these frothy whites into the yolk and flour and all that, the ricotta base. Just fold, or really rather stir, in. And when you're cooking them, I mean, if you're using an ordinary frying pan, I would use a bit of vegetable oil, but this is a non-stick griddle, and it's just a question of dolloping out spoonfuls at regular intervals, and after about 2 minutes, they'll be lovely and golden brown. Just flip them over and give them another half minute or so, and that's it. Much syrup on. Wipe them off. So I'm going to fry some lamb chops alla romana, or at least dipped in egg, breadcrumbs, and then fried in olive oil till very, very crunchy. First of all, because there is always room for a bit of brutality in the kitchen, a bit of cling film, some small lamb cutlets trimmed of most of their fat. Though I have to say, in Rome they have teeny weeny lamb cutlets. I mean, the eye of the chop is about that big. Eating them does feel a bit like the Massacre of the Innocents. And then another layer of cling film on top. And then you just thwack. If you've got a mallet, use that. I don't. And anyway, I think hitting things with a rolling pin is much richer in comic potential. These really only need a couple of minutes each side, just so the crispy, crunchy coating goes golden. And for that reason, they should really be at room temperature before they go into the hot oil. Right. Now, before I start getting the egg and the breadcrumb right, I'm just going to pour some oil in because I want this to heat up. Ordinary, not extra virgin. You can see that it's yellow rather than that thick, oozy green. It's hard to say exactly how much. It's really easy just to reckon on filling a pan up to about 1 centimetre's depth. And obviously the dimensions of your pan will determine how much oil that needs. Okay, on with the oil. Okay, time for some dipping and dunking. First eggs, just a couple. These are Italian eggs. You can see they're lovely golden yolks. Salt and pepper, and season them well because you want these to be intensely savoury. And it's just a question of whisking to combine. This is really just a glue for the breadcrumbs later. You don't need to get it frothy or anything. Now, into the breadcrumbs, I want to grate a good 10 grams of Parmesan, and that's probably enough to fill an American quarter cupful pretty generously. Anyway, I just go by eye. Now, breadcrumbs are not difficult to make, but it's slightly tedious. You have to get good bread, you have to leave it to go stale, and then you have to grate it all or process it. And I found the easiest way of making breadcrumbs quickly is just by getting some pita bread, splitting it in about 20 minutes it's dried out, and then you just need to process them. And I've really processed 3 pita breads here. That comes to about 175 grams of ordinary breadcrumbs. Right, just mix the cheese into the breadcrumbs. Very therapeutic. Okay, now it's just a question of dipping the chops first in the egg and then in the Parmesan sprinkled breadcrumbs. Just wodge it in and heap the stuff over. I find that easier. Just press on. This is really wonderful weekend cooking because children love doing this. And while I might not exactly leave them alone for a bit of deep frying now, you can leave them alone with this stage. And I'm a great believer in child labour in the kitchen. Have to be some compensations. So, just in, and I wouldn't do more than about 3 in a pan of this size at one time, otherwise the heat will drop too much, and it's that which makes fried food get greasy. If you cook in hot fat like this, everything stays so crisp and light. Now, see? I'll just turn these over. Oh, lovely. Just a minute or 2 on each side until the crumbs are a deep, deep gold. You know, this is so simple, so quick. You could make huge batches of this and cook them all before a picnic without breaking into the merest hint of a sweat. I mean, look at that. Isn't it beautiful? Just want to bite straight in at the risk of taking all the skin off the roof of my mouth. If anything could make a picnic bearable, it would be these. Just got to crunch straight in, isn't it? For a perfect picnic hamper, partner the crispy lamb chops with my fail-safe, low-effort potato salad. Just scoop out the scorched flesh of a few baked potatoes when they're cold and souse them in cumin, lemon juice, salt and olive oil and a scattering of spring onions. For a green salad that won't wilt or go soggy however long it sits in its tub, try fennel simply dressed with lemon juice, oil and salt and the finely chopped fronds that feather the top of the bulbs.